And hello, welcome back to another Sensei Pongcast video game book club. I can't do intros. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's just make that a thing. I can't do good intros. Alright, so welcome back. This week's games that I'll be talking about that you may or may not have played. I don't know. There's no listener interaction here. I am still in the process of trying to get that Reddit thing going. I need to build up more karma points. I never really used Reddit before, so I would read some Reddit posts every once in a while for just some information or just some interesting commentary on whatever, this and that. If I'm trying to look into a game or some other random stuff. But I don't find Reddit to be the most reliable source of actual information, only because it is a forum thread. So you don't have to back anything up when you make a statement. That is, if you know what I mean. You don't need to source your material. It's not that kind of stuff. Anyways, so the games that I played for this podcast, and that you should have played too, if you want to play along, are Krosmaga on PC, Steam, mobile. I was trying to get the mobile version up and running, but I just don't have enough space on my phone. I need to get a new phone. It's just what's going to happen if I want to really seriously dive down deep into mobile games and actually start covering mobile games on the currently somewhat defunct Mobile Mondays. But I never promised that Mobile Mondays would come out on Mondays on a regular basis. So possibly expect a Mobile Mondays soon, because there are some cool games that I may want to mention, and no one ever really talks about fun mobile games. At least, in the majority of gaming talk, it's always the big stuff, and I understand why. The big stuff has more things to talk about. They're more interesting, they're more flashy, they're more fun, they're deeper games, whatever, this and that. That's fine. But maybe expect a Mobile Mondays at some point very soon. Hopefully it doesn't go over 30 minutes. That way I can keep it a mini pod. Anyways, so Krosmaga, and if you didn't play it, it's a free-to-play tactical CCG trading card game thing mixed with a bit of lane mechanics, strategy, and tactics. So it's kind of those board game card game mashups. It's pretty cool. Second game that I played was Serious Sam: The First Encounter, which if you never played the Serious Sam series, but do enjoy yourself some old school FPS shoot 'em ups a la Quake, Wolfenstein, even Call of Duty, and pretty much any modern FPS. I don't know why you didn't pick this one up. Seriously, I forgot how fun this game was. I didn't actually play it all the way through, so I didn't read the book entirely, but I did have a lot of fun with it, and I just wish I had more time these past 2 weeks to play it, because I was able to blast through over half of it, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome, but I didn't have the time to really sit down with it, because third game kind of ate up the bulk of my free time, even though it was a relatively short game. I think it only took me about 9 hours, because I made a lot of notes. I was taking a lot of notes, and I started writing a synopsis because I figured it kind of needed it. It was a heavier game, because the third game is Lucy, the Eternity She Wished For, a sci-fi visual novel. And so you might be asking yourself, I know I covered this last time, and I've probably covered it before here and there. I don't know what my YouTube and podcast audience consists of. I don't know, are you mostly retro gamers? Are you mostly CCG players? Are you mostly strategy gamers? Are you mostly interactive fiction players? Hey, guess what? I play them all. So, that's why I like keeping a good varied amount of different types of genres of games in this. But I have one thing that I've been thinking about the past 2 weeks is about this podcast, and how I should really structure and what kind of games I should be playing. Every once in a while I will be playing games that are more in line with current gaming trends, current pop culture trends, or things that are just floating around the entertainment sphere. So I have decided to play Metroid 2 Samus Returns for the Game Boy because they're coming out with that remake on the 3DS. Hopefully I can pick up, or at least borrow a copy from my sister, or maybe there's one laying around here. Metroid Prime for Metroid Prime 4, at least the original on Wii. No, GameCube. Maybe Metroid Fusion, I'm not sure. But we're definitely playing Metroid 2 Samus Returns on the Game Boy. Now, just because we do play that game at some point soon, like within the next couple months, because I believe it's releasing in September on the 3DS, the remake, that is, doesn't mean it's going to be the same exact game. I would highly doubt that. From what I've seen of the trailers and gameplay and whatever, they've added a lot. They've added quite a bit. It feels more like what you would expect from a modern Metroid game. So that's cool. It doesn't look bad. It looks great. Honestly, I'm excited for it. That is easily one of my most anticipated 3DS games of this year. Let's see what else. So yeah, that covers some of the games that I've been playing this week. What have you been playing? Leave your comments down below. Some other games I've been playing this week is a little bit of mobile games. I finally picked up Has-Been Heroes and Sonic Chronicles to try to keep myself, caught up with the podcast. Has-Been Heroes is on the Switch, and I believe it is also on Steam and probably on PS4, Xbox One. I don't know. I'm on the internet. I'm on the computer. Let's look this up. Has-Been Heroes. It is available on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Microsoft Windows. It is an action game, roguelite, strategy video game. I'm not exactly sure if I'd call it an action game. Well, yeah, no, I wouldn't call it an action game because it's not really based off your like real heavy, I'd consider Serious Sam an action game, but I wouldn't consider Has-Been Heroes an action game. I'd consider Has-Been Heroes to be more of a tactical game. If you haven't picked that one up yet, I don't care what system you're playing on. I'm just letting you know I'm playing on the Switch because I got a Switch and I feel like I can use some more games, I'm not one of those people that is like looking at the Switch and being like, where's all the games? Why doesn't it have enough games? I'm not one of those people. Because let's really look at this for a second. The Switch has been out for... The Switch hasn't even been out for a full 5 months at this point. It hasn't. Let's cool our jets for a second. It hasn't been out for... Hold up. No, March, April, May, June, July. Yeah, not even a full 5 months. It hasn't been a full 5 months yet. My mental math was right. It doesn't... You can't expect, like, a giant list of giant, like, big AAA games yet. Capcom's sitting on their hands. You can't What are you expecting? That's my sentiment on it. And it has a lot of games on it. Some great games and some awesome indie titles from what I've seen. You've got Tumbleseed, you've got other stuff, you've got Mr. Shifty from what I've heard is pretty good. And it's actually I don't know why I haven't picked that one up. Well, I do know why I didn't pick up Mr. Shifty. Because I let my kids decide. I was like, hey guys, what do you want to get? You want to get Mr. Shifty, which is like this type of action-y shoot-'em-up game with blah blah blah, and this fighting game, Waku Waku 7. They look like really good games. I know Waku Waku is really good. Or do you want to get Minecraft? And they're like, I want to get Minecraft. I was like, oh, okay, guys, we'll get Minecraft. So yeah, that's how it was. Has-Been Heroes was a thing for me. I was like, no, I want a roguelike. I want a roguelite. It's okay. It's not a true rogue-like. It's a roguelite. So I know some of y'all will be like real nitpicky about that. Some of y'all won't even know the difference and don't even care. You just care if it's a fun game. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about Has-Been Heroes as of right now, only because that's for next episode. I'll let you know what I think. But briefly, am I liking it? Oh yeah, I'm loving it. I am absolutely loving it. And if you look up some reviews, I got them some things to say about like them reviews. 'Cause you know what? Get good. I hate using that. I hate using that stupid meme. Because everyone anytime you come across a difficult game, they're like, "Oh, this is a Dark Souls of this. This is a Dark Souls of that." It's like, no, 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 it's not. No, 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 it's not. Like I heard like some people complaining about the Crash Bandicoot remake, being like, "Oh man, this is the Dark Souls of 3D platforming." I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I recently played the original Crash Bandicoot, like maybe like 2 years ago. And yeah, it's hard, but it's still fun. And I wouldn't call it, the Dark Souls of 3D platforming. It's not. It's just, you get like with these older games, they're just more difficult because of a bunch of different reasons. They wanted you got to have a nice level of you got to balance that, like, okay, when you were developing a game back then, you had to balance a higher level of difficulty with good replay value, because most people didn't buy a whole bunch of games. The bulk of people didn't buy a whole bunch of games. You want to create a long enough experience as possible. Also, if you make the game difficult, you're going to be stuck in one spot for maybe 30 minutes, right? So, versus being stuck in one spot for only 10 minutes, that lengthens your playtime. So overall, once you're said and done with the game, just personally or emotionally or even just objectively, like, oh, I 100%ed the game, at that point, you've already clocked in on a casual level, maybe like 15 hours, 20 hours. At a more like hardcore level, maybe 40 is 60 hours. I don't know. It really depends on how good at platformers you really are. Okay, maybe if you're like really good at like 3D platformers, you can blast through it within like 10 to 20 hours. I don't know. I don't know enough about the Crash Bandicoot series to really give you good estimates here. But you're gonna keep playing it over and over again. And if you're a kid, you're gonna love it, because it's like, if you're a kid, you don't have the options to be like buying game after game after game. In most cases, your parents are gonna be like, okay, I'm buying you this game. Be good next year for Christmas, and maybe you'll get another one, or, if you do all your chores, maybe you'll get one for your birthday, that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? And if you're doing chores around the house, maybe you're only getting like an allowance of like $5 a week or whatever. And, if you want to save up, that's going to take you months to save up and get Crash Bandicoot, like the newest, one of the new games, and be all like, yeah, I got my own game with my own money, that sort of stuff. So, really, what it comes down to is older games are just hard. New games feel like... There was an interesting discussion on the Co-optional podcast about, like, looking back on older games and being like, the good old games, and a lot of those good old games aren't good old games. Because as game development has progressed over the years, it's not even so much like graphics or like different ideas and mechanics within the game. It's actual, like, how does a game mechanically feel? So it's one of those funny things that, like, again, on the Co-optional podcast, he had heard it from somebody else. So this is all hearsay, but, he had heard it from a developer. It might have been Miyamoto, but it was a developer for a Mario, like the Mario series, and they were saying something along the lines of, now, what is actually physically happening within the digital game, the digital environment of the game, does not line up with what your mind thinks to the game. So when, let's say you're with Mario dashing along and you jump off a platform onto another platform, oftentimes than not, you're going to derp it and run off if the game was actually true to the button inputs to what is actually happening with Mario on the platform. He said, from what it actually looks like from your perspective as the player, and the button response on like reaction times and all that, you actually gotta like program it slightly slower, well, slightly later, and allow a larger hitbox, so the player actually ends up, it's like the game is playing towards the player's favor at this point. It still requires skill. It still requires that level of skill to be able to play the game, but you gotta add those grace periods, like time, and like little, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta add those like easier implements to make the game actually just a little bit easier. That way it doesn't feel like the game's cheating you out, even though it really isn't cheating you out. But mentally, as a human, we feel like it's cheating us out. It's just a funny little interesting thing to look into. Other one was kind of funny, like games with RNG factors, like a lot of roguelites and TCG games. People constantly are like ragging on these RNG based games, being like, this game is bull crap. It's just the game is working up against me because, it says it's 80%. It says it has a 90% accuracy, but I missed. What is up? Yeah, but you also have that 10% inaccuracy. You got to take that in consideration. And it's a discussion that comes up a lot, but when a game, oftentimes than not, when a game says 90% accuracy, they actually have to bump up the actual RNG within the programming up to like 95%, 97% to make it feel like 90%. It's like, what do we experience as humans, and how do we perceive this probability of what 90% should feel like versus what 90% actually is? It's a funny thing like that. Playing some D&D, you really get to see that RNG actually come to life a bit more, because you don't have the leeways that a developer can just like secretly stuff into the program lines and all that, but you're rolling a dice, so dice is more random at that point. It's just like, oh, critical failure. It's like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead scenario of them flipping the coin over and over and over and over and over again, and they keep getting tails. They keep getting tails. And he poses the question, what are the chances of me getting tails 500 times in a row? Oddly enough, it's still a 50-50 chance. It doesn't matter how many times in a row you get. Once that coin flips up into the air, it's still a 50-50 chance. So there is that chance that you will get tails. 10 times in a row, 20 times in a row, 30 times in a row. I'm going on a lot of tangents here. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Sensei Pong, and sometimes we talk about video games. Copyright flag, and that is from the Co-optional Podcast. We sometimes talk about games. We sometimes, yes, we, me, myself, and all my children. Anyways, what was my point? Oh my gosh. Okay, blah 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 blah. Games I have been playing. Okay, so yeah, I picked up Sonic Chronicles and Has Been Heroes, so I can catch up on the next podcast, which will air in the next 2 weeks. And I think that's the schedule I'm going to be sticking to. Every 2 weeks, there's going to be a podcast for the Video Game Book Club, and every once in a while, I haven't been able to sit down with it. I just haven't been able to, but I'm going to like throw in a mini pod maybe in between every once in a while. So keep a lookout for that. Hopefully I can get what I'm planning to do is hopefully get a Mobile Mondays up. It's not going to be posting on Monday. That's part of the joke there. And maybe a reading gamer about Lucy, the attorney she with for. The attorney she with for. Specifically because, I feel like I haven't really done any like reading gamers, but it was an idea I had like a couple years ago for the channel, where I'd concentrate on an interactive fiction or a visual novel or a text adventure game and be like, reading gamer, butterfly in my eye, that sort of stuff. But most people cut off as soon as I start singing terribly, and they're like, oh, this video is crap. The people that stick through it, they're like, oh man, this video was awesome. It's like, I gotta figure out some way, either just cut out that intro sequence entirely, because it grosses people out. Yes, it's cringy to myself too, I know, but figured, okay, well, it's just a test run. I only have 2 episodes up. One was on the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time manga, and the other one was an actual serious review of Depression Quest, when it was somewhat trending. It was like several months after the whole Gamergate thing started, so I wasn't like trying to like just bank in on, the clicks. I want to give my honest opinion, and that's actually one of my higher rated reviews, even though it's not like super watched or anything, and it's not entertaining to watch like some of my stuff. Like some of my stuff I'd consider to be relatively comedic and entertaining. But the Depression Quest review is an actual review. Go look that up on YouTube. Just type in Sensei Pong, Depression Quest, a reading gamer, and decide for yourself whether or not I'm being fair about it. Because I really pick apart like how the like the writing is actually structured, how the game itself as an interactive fiction is structured, what I felt was its strengths, what I felt was its weaknesses, and then finally I give it my score. Anyways, what else have I played? Oh boy, I'm trying to think to myself. Oh, I played Dragon Crystal on the Game Gear, and oh, that reminds me, on the phone too. There's this thing called Sega Forever, and I got it. Man, here, let's just Dragon. Well, okay, so if you don't know what Crystal is basically like Fatal Labyrinth on the Sega Genesis. Was it Sega Genesis? My mind is like saying Master System. Let's look this up. Yeah, Sega Genesis. And Game Gear. Really? Okay. Well, no, they play exactly the same though. It's just maybe Fatal Labyrinth has some extra stuff, like actual items and gameplay implements. I know it also has like some NPCs and stuff you can interact with in Fatal Labyrinth. Dragon Crystal is basically just the base game, but they're essentially the same type of game. It's an actual rogue-like, and it's actually it's a fun game. I've been having a ball with it. I forgot how fun it really was. But, maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea because it's a very, very old school. It's a very old school roguelike. So there isn't like a huge amount of depth. And when you die, if you haven't saved your game, or if you're playing on an emulator, if you don't like save state, you got to start all the way back at the beginning because you got permadeath going on. So, it's one of those games that might take you like years to like try to finish. Well, maybe not years. That's like we're talking about like that's like NetHack. No, we're talking about like a simpler game than NetHack, where it might take you a year to actually finish it if you're playing it true to form of saying, okay, when my character dies, I got to start all over. That sort of stuff. What are my views on like save states with that sort of game? I don't really, because I'm only posing this question because there's a small amount of like hardcore roguelike players that would say, no, when you die, you start off to the beginning. And it's funny, a lot of roguelike players set a lot of rules for themselves. Similar to like how Pokemon players set like harder or easier rules on a Nuzlocke. It's one of those things where I don't exactly care as long as you follow your own rule set, and because that can be a lot of fun. I like following hard rules, and I like saying to myself, if my character dies, I gotta start all the way at the beginning. Now, would I still feel bad if like I got a really good run in like some of the best equipment in the game and I have to start all over again? Oh yeah, it's frustrating, but it just keeps for me personally, it's a driving force. I like coming across obstacles. I like near impossible situations, and I like confronting these harder situations and being able to figure it out. And then it actually makes me a better player because I would figure out different strategies or like try different strategies, this and that sort of thing. Similar to what I figured out in Has Been Heroes. I figured out the main tactics and I started breezing through it. Well, not breezing through it, but from what it sounds like, way, way better than most people. And it's not even so much that I'm a good, like, strategy gamer. I just have a little bit of experience in strategy games. I wouldn't say I'm, a master at it. I wouldn't say I'm, like, professional level. Watch me in StarCraft. Yes, I know StarCraft has a lot of, like, action reflex, but, oh boy. When you get me into a RTS game, you're just, I'm worthless. I might be better than the average casual. Oh, yeah. But either way, whatever. Fun stuff. But that reminds me, Sega Forever launched a few weeks ago. And what Sega Forever is, if you don't know, it's on mobile. Basically, what Sega's trying to do is get every single like classic Sega title onto the mobile market for free, free through ads. And if you want to pay for it, it costs $1 to get rid of the ads. I'm really, really, really hoping that this idea that Sega is going for really pays out for them, because I would love to see the entire Sega library on mobile. I know it's going to take time. I don't expect them to come out with every single game all at once. That's just ridiculous. Also, that's overkill. If you just dump out like 500 games within like a year, the Sega Forever market's going to get oversaturated, and people are going to miss out on like games they normally wouldn't pick up. That might actually be something that's really, really good. Like maybe Dragon Crystal, Comic Zone. Comic Zone is out on the market right now, and from what I remember, it's a very fun action platformer with an awesome art style as well. And from what I've seen, heard, and experienced a little for myself, okay, so the problem with playing these console games on your phone is you're having to deal with a touch screen. Yes, there's Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth compatible to a controller, but most people don't have a Bluetooth controller for their phone. Most casual people don't have that. Let's put that out there and assume that maybe only 1%, 5% of the players have a controller. 5% is really, really giving it the... So realistically, it's 1%, maybe. Maybe. How are the touchscreen controls? Not as bad as you'd think. It's not good. It's not great. But from what I've experienced with like Sonic and Comic Zone and Kid Chameleon, oh baby, it could be a lot worse. But it's definitely not that bad. They did a pretty decent job. And the nice thing about this is if they can figure out how to make it control better through the touchscreen, they have the options to like update and all that. So hopefully more updates come around to make the games easier to play. The one game that was actually really easy to play was Phantasy Star 2. I only was able to like start it up and play a little bit because it's on my phone. And normally when I pick up my phone and play a game, it's only for a few minutes. I don't have that much time to play on my phone. Definitely if I'm carrying my Switch or my 3DS around with me, if I want to play a mobile game, I weigh my choices. I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, I got my 3DS, or I got my Switch, or I got both, and I got my phone. What am I going to be playing? Well, I need my phone's battery life for work. I need my phone's battery life. There's utility in there, and the games are better on the Switch and the 3DS. What am I probably going to be playing? I'm probably going to be playing on my Nintendo 3DS or the Switch. Maybe if I have my PSP on me, I'll easily pick that over my phone. That's just how it is for me. That's why I like handhelds, because I don't want to be killing my battery knowing that, maybe I'm going to be out for the whole day and I won't be able to charge my phone at any point. I need to save that battery life. For the 3DS or the Switch, it doesn't exactly matter. So, that sort of thing. That's why I like it. But regardless of that, I find the Sega Forever initiative to be an awesome idea and very cool of them. They're not charging money for this. You can drop that $1 to get rid of the ads, but they're not charging money for this. They just want people playing their games again. And I love this idea because they have such an awesome library of games. They even have Crazy Taxi on there, which is crazy to think about. My phone can't hold it, but I don't have that great of a phone. I don't have that much like free space on my phone. So, that's my fault. It's not that, it's not. It is what it is. But if I were to get a better phone and a Bluetooth controller, now I have to get a Bluetooth controller. Now I absolutely have to, because this whole Sega Forever initiative is just the most brilliant thing in the world, and I'm okay with it. Emulation-wise, it actually runs pretty well, so that's also a plus, if that's what you were worried about as well, because a lot of emulators don't necessarily work that well. Some emulators on mobile are very iffy, so I'm not sure exactly how Sega is like formatting these games on the phone. I'm assuming it's just straight emulators, like they developed their own emulator, probably looked at Fusion or something and was like, oh, Okay. Alright, well, let's figure that out. Whoop, boom, boom. Or they looked at some Dreamcast emulator and was like, alright, let's figure out how we can make this for ourselves. And then we're able to get Crazy Taxi on there. So I'm assuming that's how it works. That seems like the easiest way for a programmer to like try to program a port. Anyways, I could be wrong. What else have I played? Is there any like big news? Oh, that's something I didn't look up. I didn't look up any big news. Alright, here you go.
The big IGN news story of the week.
So this week's IGN news story for the solid gaming news that we have. No, quiet. Is about Aladdin and the live action reboot. Anyways, it states in the headline that Aladdin Power Rangers star Naomi Scott eyed for Jasmine as filmmakers struggle to cast the title role. Filming scheduled to begin in August. While Disney is struggling to find the male lead for its upcoming live-action Aladdin movie, the studio is reportedly interested in casting Naomi Scott as Jasmine. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Scott, who starred as Kimberly, aka Pink Ranger, in this year's Power Rangers movie, the Indian actress Tara Sutaria are being eyed for female lead. However, a deal can't be signed until the studio selects an actor to play as Aladdin, as they want to ensure there's chemistry between the two. Disney director Guy Ritchie and casting director Randy Hiller, I almost thought that said Hitler, have conducted what is said to be a major search across London, Egypt, India, and other parts of the world to find suitable leads. With approximately 2,000 actors and actresses reading the parts of I'm real curious on who's playing the genie. I think that's already been decided. I forget. Don't exactly care about this movie. Look, I love the Aladdin movie itself. The original movie from the 90s is one of the pinnacle Disney animations. But that's the problem. It's one of the pinnacle Disney animations. I have the same sentiment towards Beauty and the Beast that I do have an Aladdin like live action. It's just why do we need this? And this is going to be tricky because I'm not sure exactly how people would respond to this, because I think ultimately they're just going to be looking at like the genie and be like, well, he's not as good as Robin Williams, that sort of thing, because it'd be very, very, very hard to top Robin Williams. Now, kudos to who was that guy? Let's look this up. Return of Jafar, Dan Castellaneta. So he was the guy that voiced the genie in Return of Jafar. And, when I was a kid, I was like, it's not Robin Williams. I was like, it's not Mrs. Doubtfire, I don't like it. But at the same time, I didn't realize that right off the bat. Dan Castellaneta did actually a surprisingly really, really good impersonation of Robin Williams as a genie. It's real tricky, and hats off to him. He's the same. I don't need to look this one up to know, but it was just because it was something I looked up randomly. I was like, oh, what else has he done? And I was like, oh, wow, okay. He's a relatively prominent voice actor. One of his big roles that he's known for is Homer from The Simpsons. So, did I see Homer in the genie? No, not at all, because he's just one of the really good, voice actors that can do like a million different roles. He's one of those guys. Gilbert Gottfried as Iago. So, what do I think of all this? Has us. Now, I think it'd be funny if they just basically like 3D scan the actors and make a HD, like very uncanny valley human-like 3D VR game reboot of Aladdin on the Super Nintendo and Genesis. I want to see that. That's either going to be one of two things. The most awesome thing in the world or the most terrifying thing in the world. And regardless of how that would turn out, I want to see that. So that's how it pertains to games, I suppose. Yep. These IGN news stories of the week always kind of fall. It's like it's funny. The way the excitement bar graph I've noticed these past several episodes is that it's like, oh, here's the IGN news story of the week, and it all just slowly like dives down the graph of excitement. It's like one giant hill, and it's like, yay, a roller coaster that just pans out, and the end of the roller coaster is very, very dull and boring, and I apologize. I may have to stop the news story of the week. How long have I been recording it? I think, yeah, oh my gosh, I've been recording for too long. The intro is way too long here. Alright, so let's just carry on into the games that I've been playing, the games. Alright, first up is Krosmaga, PC, Steam, mobile. And like I said earlier, I played on PC Steam. I had a little bit of money in my Steam wallet account, so I was able to get that starter pack. Did that help me at all overall? No. Because now, there's good things and bad things about this game. The way it plays, if you haven't played it. Okay, first off, if you don't know where these characters are from, or like the art style or whatever, it's from an earlier MMO from, I want to say it started in 2005, maybe 2006, maybe it was like 2005, but Dofus. And it was, it's an MMO, like an SRPG MMO, and I did play it back then. I was really into Dofus back in like 2005, 2007, up until about 2007. I didn't play a whole bunch, and I wasn't like a hardcore player, but I did play enough to know a lot about the game. And that was back when Sacriers were new. Yes, for any like longtime Dofus fans, you'll know how old school of a Gen 1er I am with the Dofus series. But it's an awesome MMO. If there's any MMO that I'd get back into, and I highly doubt I would, it would probably be Dofus, maybe Wakfu. But Wakfu's the sequel. And if you've been trolling around Netflix, you might have come across Wakfu, the animated series, which is actually quite fun, and actually a really good series. Dives into the lore of the Dofus world. And the lore of the Dofus world is that there's 12 gods, and 12 races, and when you start the game you can choose 12 races, racy. And they've added a couple other ones, like the rogue and the masquerader and the foggernaut, but apparently those are actually just like same race as a different one. They just play incredibly differently, use different weapons, because as technology progresses in the world, or like you have offshooting groups that turn into their own thing. Basically what it is. I think the rogue is an offshoot of the SRAM. It would make sense. SRAMs are the sneaky assassin types. Rogues in-game are like kind of, as you can probably guess, they're like rogues, but they use more like bombs and traps. They're very trap-based, and they use a lot of bombs. And I always liked playing as the rogue. Rogue is relatively new. When I say relatively new, maybe like 5-6 years old, so maybe not that new in terms of a playable race. Foggernaut's pretty cool. I don't have that much experience with them. Now, with the PC version that I have, they don't have the Fika, they don't have the Samadas, they don't have the Pandawa. That's who it was. Yeah. Which I'm kind of sad about, because I love the Pandawas. That was my favorite class. Mostly because you get drunk. And I would always like throw, in the actual game itself, I'd always throw on like high like MP boosting like gear. So like, because when they drink, like they have like two basic builds that you can make with a Pandawa. You can make the drunk build, the alcoholic build, or the sober build. And it just kind of changes how you build your character. Now, what I liked doing was I would like building a drunk build, but giving like MP boosting gear. So like when you become drunk as a character, your defense goes up, your attack goes up, but your movement goes down. So like you can't move across the board very well. Like maybe you might be able to move like maybe 1 or 2 spaces, but with all that MP boosting gear, I'd be able to move maybe 1 space more than what you'd normally be able to move. Maybe like 4, maybe 3 regular, maybe 5. And it was always funny because like sometimes I'd get into PvP matches, or like group up with randos, and it'd be like They'd see me get drunk, and suddenly I just bolt across the the field, and they're like, angry drunk guy. It's kind of funny because the animation wasn't built to be moved. The animation wasn't built for that because it's like when you move across maybe just like 2 spaces, it's like boom, 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 boom. Your arms are swinging left and right. But if with those MP boosting stuff, it's basically the same animation but stretched out over 5 spaces within the same amount of time. So it's like blah, 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 it's kind of freaky. It's like, oh boy, now he's scary, and he pukes because he knows the move hangover. So, back to Krosmaga. Go look up Wakfu, the animated series, if you're interested in the universe of this game, but don't feel like playing anything. And just want to watch something that's almost a pseudo-anime. It comes out of a French studio called Ankama Studios and all that. They're a cool studio company. The games they usually come out with are pretty high quality. I can respect them for all that. They've got a very creative world and a lot of humor, like just sprinkled throughout their games. Anyways, back to Krosmaga. What is it? Well, Krosmaga is, like I said, a competitive TCG game with a board. And you play, it's got like a Hearthstone system of energy where like you start off with 1, and then for every turn it builds up and it caps at 10. You also do have a reserve that you can build up your AP points, and whoever goes second gets 1 extra AP point in their reserve as just a little thing to be like, hey, let's try to balance this game a little bit and not give the first player advantage here. Now, did I like it? Yes. There's a good variation between all the classes, and as I was playing, they added the Enotrophs, which was pretty cool. I love the Enotrophs. The Enotrophs are fun. They're basically just a bunch of greedy old people, but that throw shovels, like treasure hunters. But would I say, how would I compare it to other TCG games or board game hybrid TCG games like Faria? I might actually have to say I like Krosmaga a little bit better, because it is more fun. It's a recognizable world that I know, so I can be like, oh hey, it's the Tofus. I wonder how a whole Tofu deck would be like. Do they actually work well together as a group? Or like, do the Peewees actually help out quite a bit? Or do making a press pick or a chafer deck or a jelly deck? That sort of stuff, basing it off the neutral cards, not so much like, oh, well, I'm going to have a specifically Syrah-based deck, or what kind of, the strategy of figuring out with your deck building of, oh, well, how well does the IOPS work well with the Tofus, the Cracklers, or, all that kind of stuff. Who works well with what, and it was kind of interesting to see how everything played out. And I would assume some monster groups would actually work better with different races, while others don't work as well. And I couldn't really give you like what works the best and what worked best for me outside of what race did I seem to have the best luck with. I actually had quite a bit of luck with the Eka flips. And the funny thing about the Eka flips is that they're all like kind of based off chance-based die rolls. And that might sound good and bad, but since they're very like melee-based class, you're not so much like shooting yourself in the foot all the time like it was like back in 2005 with the MMO and the Eka flip class. It's like, I don't know, it was fun. I like those weird random chances, and it's also seemed to be a very draw heavy deck. Not like super draw heavy, but a relatively higher like drawing factor. The other class that I liked, only because I think it was because I liked the classes in the game, like the main game, were the Zaylors and the Sras. Like the Sras are all like archers, and they're easy to play in the MMO, but I find them fun because you can snipe. How did it play out into the board game, Krosmaga, with the cards? I ended up building decks based off of like repelling my opponent and keeping a distance. So it actually ended up kind of playing like the actual MMO, and I thought that was, quite interesting how close it actually ended up playing like the actual MMO. Well, that was cool. Other points, though, you raise your attack points and lower your range. So maybe I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool. I only, but I don't know if I really figured out like a good way to build these decks because honestly, compared to like Pokemon or even Hearthstone or Magic, my win to lose ratio was bordering around like 50-50, if not less on certain classes. And I was just like, man, I am really bad at building these decks or something, or I'm just not getting the tactics involved here. Because at that point, it's not the game that's unfair. I'm just not playing the game right or something. So, but did I still enjoy it? Losing more times than winning? Quite yes, I did because like I said, I like these kind of challenges and I like these kind of strategy games. Though I do feel as if it falls into the same problem that a lot of these like trading card games have. Yeah, it might be free to play, but the biggest problem is you're not going to have a good deck like within the first couple months of playing. I can see this already. You're not going to have like the best decks possible. It's impossible. Now, you might have a good deck. You might have a above average deck within the first 2 months of playing. But even though this game is relatively, giving on how much coins you get because of the dailies, and then you also have like kind of dungeon-esque kind of one-player game, and then like the drafts that happen on the weekends, which is kind of like what was that called? The pub, or the Chaos Arena in Elder Scrolls, the card game. I feel as if it's not as necessarily fair as maybe Gwent, because Gwent, it seemed like maybe it was just too early in the life cycle of Gwent because it's still a beta and it's not actually a fully released game, and nobody had like most people don't have all the good cards, but I feel as if it's closer to the pay to win model as like Hearthstone. Maybe not as bad as Hearthstone, because it doesn't seem like they're coming out with new expansions like every few months that destroy the meta and then creating a new meta, that sort of thing. So if you want to give it a shot, totally give it a shot. Just mind you, it's both a board game, so it doesn't play exactly the same. But maybe you need something different in your life. So maybe you as the listener will enjoy Krosmaga more than Hearthstone. I'm not sure. I think I do enjoy Krosmaga more than Hearthstone, though. I think I'd have to rank it higher in terms of my personal tastes. Now, I think that's the only real flaw I found with the game. Because, frankly, those good cards are very good cards, and they're not easy to get. It's random chance through the packs. And even though I did get the starter pack for like $5, I don't have like very good decks. Only a few of my classes I can say are relatively strong. Like my IOP is relatively good. The decks I can build with the Eco Flipper is pretty good. The Zaylor is it's okay, and I think the other ones that are pretty good. Oh, it is Sedita. My Sedita deck is pretty decent, but I don't know. I think it's best built for just light casual play. Now, if you want to get hardcore into it, you have that option. So overall, I think it's a solid game. If you like these types of games, please go check it out. It's very fun. Heck, you might actually just love it, and it might be your go-to game for TCG. Excuse me. It might turn into your go-to game for TCGs. But for me personally, I'm not sure. I'm still on the fence about it. I'll come back to you in a couple months on if I still think it's, all that in a cup of cheese. I need coffee. Moving on. Oh, what do I rank it and how do I rate it as of now? I'd give it a strong. Well, that was gross. I'm not even going to explain what happened, but that was kind of gross. I'd give it a strong, maybe like 8 or 9 out of 10. A good 4 out of 5 stars, or 4.5 stars out of 10. I'd say maybe like 8.5 out of 10. There you go. 8.5 out of 10. It's a very solid game. I found a lot of fun with it. But if I were to really plan on playing this in the future, I'd have to just accept the fact that I'd probably be losing a lot of games, which is fine. I'm okay with that, but I'm not sure if everybody out there in the world is okay with that. People like that power trip. Then again, it is a multiplayer competitive game, so obviously there's always going to be somebody out there that's just better than you. So, maybe that's just not the kind of gamer that you are. So, I don't think it's for everybody. And that's why I had to knock off a couple points. But it's definitely the kind of game I love. So, it's a relatively high score, 8.5. Yeah. Moving on, let's head on to Serious Sam, the first encounter. Our story takes place in the future. And alien space demon things have taken over the world. And you go back in time. And they pull out one of Earth's greatest heroes who fought off the invasion in the first couple years. Serious Sam. And you shoot up aliens. That's about it. With a very Egyptian themed, like ancient aliens type thing going. Alright, so yeah, if you played this, you know the story doesn't exactly matter. At the end of the game, there's a cliffhanger and a tease to the next game because it says to be continued, and he's gonna go off and like kind of forget. But I've never really paid attention to the storyline of Serious Sam. I've never really cared about the storyline of Serious Sam. I just know, oh, okay, space aliens, ancient aliens. Alright, cool, let's shoot them up. And that's always been my sentiment on the plot of Serious Sam. It doesn't matter. No one's really caring about the lore for this game. If you do truly care about the lore, please let me know. Because I'm not sure if I've really come across anybody that's really cared about the lore. Which is very refreshing. And what I love about these old school FPS games, it's not about the lore. It's not about the story. It's about the gameplay. Now, Serious Sam's little comments here and there, his dialogue, and the cutscenes are pretty funny because he does make some like pop culture references. He's basically like the poor man's Duke Nukem. He was a bargain bin, like a little bit of history on the Serious Sam franchise. He was kind of a bargain bin indie title that had come out of Czechoslovakia, was it? Czech Republic? I'm not sure, but not Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia hasn't been a thing for a very long time. It would have to be the Czech Republic. Maybe it was Romanian. I'm not sure. So some kind of it's in the Balkan Peninsula. A Balkan Peninsula Eastern European studio called Crow Team. Oh no, Croatia. That's what it was. Croatia. I think they're out of Croatia. Crow Team. That would make sense. Croatia, Crow Team. Yeah. Alright. I can look this up very easily, but I'm not going to. Anyways, they're a very small indie company that just wanted to make a fun shoot 'em up game, kind of in the style of Duke Nukem, but didn't really have the money and didn't put like a high price tag on it. So I want to say it might have been like $10 when it first came out, or maybe $5, and then the price dropped to like $5, $10 in the in your bargain bins at the grocery store back in the day. So people would pick this up and be like, okay, well this is kind of like Duke Nukem. Let's try this. Let's play this. And everybody that had played it back then was pleasantly surprised, because what this game consists of, if you didn't play it yourself, is, this is my own personal opinion, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the game plays, so first off, it's a high adrenaline, kind of like frantic arena FPS shooter with a whole bunch of enemies all just like running at you. But how does this actually, I can almost, I feel as if this is like the 3D shoot 'em up equivalent of like an old school Castlevania or Ghosts and Goblins. Maybe like how it would be like if you played like a twin stick shooter, like a frantic twin stick shooter like Robotron, but in first person perspective. Just replace everything with like weird funny monsters and stuff. And oh my gosh, time period. I'm not sure if you could pull this off now, but since they are from Croatia, it's fine. They're not like held back by like American sentiments, but like one of the bad guys is please excuse this is not me, this is the game. It's a Syrian terrorist with his head cut off, with his hands replaced with bombs, and all he does is and he runs straight at you. And when he comes towards you, he explodes because he's a kamikaze, suicide bomber. Now, the real difficulty of this game isn't the AI. That all the bosses, all the enemies are pretty stupid. They're not smart. But what makes this game so difficult and so hard is that yeah, one suicide bomber, one guy with a rocket launcher, one funny like crazy like bio weapon demon thing maybe pretty easy to deal with or very easy to deal with. Yeah, easy to deal with. But what if you throw down like 30 of them, 20 of them, 10 of them all just randomly pop up? That's when it gets hard. And it is fun because you're constantly moving, you're constantly shooting, you're constantly dodging and all sorts of fun stuff. Jumping around. And it's a serious power trip game because all the enemies are so stupid that you can just go bow 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 and like they come down, but there's still like 50 more of them, and just like slaughtering left and right. And it is a very fun game. And for what I did play of it, I played most of it, but I didn't get to finish it in time. It was, I think I've been needing this kind of game for a while. I haven't really sat down with an FPS game for a while, but I thought it to be like just one of the best FPSs I've played in a long time. And yeah, it's a classic, and I've always liked the Serious Sam series. It's always been fun. I've always been kind of a cheap gamer, but what's real funny is that it still holds up really well today. Because just the simple design of how the enemies move and the careful layouts of each level and the arenas and all that, they did a really good job on this. There's no like major glaring problems other than, a few like small things here and there. And maybe I'm just a wuss, but I still jump. I still jump and be like, ah, when like 5 random bad guys might just like pop up around me because I went into like a secret area that like triggers like an event, and they all just like pop up out of a portal. It's like, ugh, okay, I gotta deal with them now. I don't know, there isn't much to talk about this game. It's except maybe the mechanical things. Controls feel perfect. I was playing on keyboard and mouse, so. And I like the WASD, the WADs, the WASD controls with the mouse and the left hand and all that. It feels very natural to me. Maybe I've played too many PC games, but just that kind of control scheme feels very natural to me. Would this probably be fun with a controller? Yeah, probably. But for this type of FPS game, I'd rather have, the precision of a mouse. Because, just point and click, that sort of thing. Now, so mechanically, the game still holds up really well. It controls great, it's responsive, and since it is an older game, it can pretty much run on any PC of these days. So, frame rate is great. Everything about it is just great. Level designs, a lot of open spaces. You don't have any of this like weird corridor shooter like covering and all that. You can play with the environment, like hide behind a tree, hide behind, a rock or a hill or a grassy knoll. But overall, it's basically just, oh, we're in a giant space. Now there's like 10 rhinos all running at you. Whatever those guys are called, I forget. The rhino guys, the ones that can like knock off half your health if you're not careful. I love fighting those guys are always fun for me personally. It's just they're easy to dodge, but if you're not paying attention, there's a lot going on the screen, a lot going on around you, and it's one of those games you got to like really put your attention to when you are playing it because there's so much going on. It almost feels like a twin stick shooter in that regard, because like a twin stick bullet hell, if in that regard, I mean. Because there's so many things flying at you, there's so many monsters flying at you, that it's just, you're constantly dodging and moving. And gameplay-wise, oh baby, it still holds up. I can see Serious Sam being one of those games maybe in the next 10 years to be considered like a classic PC FPS game, one of the good ones. And I'm really happy as of recent years that Serious Sam has gotten more like news coverage and like light in the PC gaming atmosphere, because growing up, not that many people knew about Serious Sam, because like I said, it was kind of a smaller indie title. At the time, he had like other games like Doom and Quake, and that took the spotlight. I'm not saying they didn't deserve the spotlight, but those games took the spotlight. Those were the classic, FPS games that you'd automatically think of while playing. And I only knew maybe like one or two people that played Serious Sam growing up. And that's how I learned about Serious Sam, and when I played it, I was like, wow, this is crazy. This is nuts, This is like Duke Nukem times 10, but it's a fun game. Hopefully you played it, and maybe this is the first time that you played it before, but I played it in the past, so I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. And it's one of those games that I pick up every year or every few years. One of the iterations of it, Serious Sam 2, Serious Sam 3 maybe. But, one of those, I just pick up Serious Sam every once in a while and just go at it. I don't always beat the game. I'm just like, yeah, I just feel like playing some Serious Sam right now. Because it's one of those things where it's like very cathartic and I find it kind of meditative and relaxing, even though it's like, you're on edge, because if you're playing with headphones, you suddenly hear the coming at you. Maybe that's not relaxing, but I find some relaxation in there, because completely focused on one thing, you can space out and just deal with whatever's coming at you at hand. I always find these kind of FPS games to be very nice, very, very relaxing. Most relaxing game out of the bunch this week. So, if this is your first time playing Serious Sam, please let me know in the comments below. What'd you think? How would you rate it up against shooters these days? I'd say it's about equal, if not better. I find Serious Sam to be more fun to play than most current FPS games, oddly enough. Yeah, let me know. So, here's the big one. Lucy and the Eternity She Wished For. This game is available on PC, Steam, blah blah blah. It's a visual novel. It's a sci-fi game. It's titled as a dating sim, and to some degree it is. But I wouldn't call it necessarily a true dating sim, just more of a visual novel, with some romantic elements. And first off, before I go into anything, I want to really commend the game for not getting dirty and adult and all weird hentai stuff, because they could have easily done that. But they concentrated more on the plot of the story and the deeper questions that are involved with the story. So I appreciate that, And there was some humor here and there that was, sexually themed, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was distasteful. I'd say it was relatively tasteful and pretty funny. Now, I actually wrote up a synopsis for this, so hopefully we can go through this. Now, I will say that there's going to be some minor spoilers when I'm talking about this, but hopefully I don't go over anything major if you haven't played it. Because if you enjoy these visual novels and if you enjoy sci-fis, I highly recommend that you play this, because this is easily one of the best visual novels that's covered this sort of stuff before. It's really, really freaking good. I need to actually really sit down and play Analog, but because I heard that's really good. Maybe we can do that for Visual Novel Month, because I'm bringing that back. Visual Novel Interactive Fiction Month, but I don't know, we'll see. Anyways, what's the story about? Let's read my synopsis. Alright, I feel like I've already covered this in my introduction to my synopsis. First, I'm not going to cover the entire story in detail. That'd take too long, and I don't want to spoil the entire thing. So I'll cover the introduction and key plot. But, warning, obvious spoilers. Our story begins with some exposition to our character's ideals and beliefs. The year is 2050, and being the existential nihilist our character might be, we tell that the world that was to be foreseen through past science fictions did not come true. No flying cars, no interstellar starships, no aliens. Side note, he doesn't mention this, but dude should look on the bright side a bit more. No nuclear war, no aliens that want to destroy the world's national monuments, and no eco-social health collapse that may or may not include zombies, riding extinction event asteroids. Seriously, if nothing but peace and relative social stability occurs from now and the next 30 years, I'd consider that an achievement. Get a grip. Okay, so, this isn't actually written in the synopsis, I'm just saying this really fast. My whole demeanor changes when I'm reading a script. It's quite funny. I'm not the chill, relaxed kind of dude that's every once in a while. It's just so yeah. If the whole feeling of this podcast changes because I'm reading the script, I'm sorry. It's just what I am. It's what I do. Carry on. He does state that one major thing that the sci-fi stories of old did get right, though, was the advancement of robots and androids. Androids are everywhere, and they are an integral part to civilization. They build the cars, they build the cities, they work the factories, they help run a major part of the service industry, they work the remedial jobs that can easily be replaced with a simple-minded AI. All in all, they are a key part to the infrastructure of future civilization. With this, of course, unemployment is high and a resentment of androids and robots are present. But despite the cities of cries of the lower classes, it only makes economic sense to have androids and robots take the place of line cooks, janitors, housekeepers, and the majority of the blue-collar workforce as a whole. Moving on, he explains his personal sentiments towards the things that surround him. He prefers analog over digital clocks, pianos over synthesizers, real people over androids. Look, basically he's the future equivalent of a hipster. There's no detail on how he looks physically, but at this point I just imagine the playable character to be wearing freaking suspenders, thick glasses, likes facial hair, plays video games from the 1980s to the plethora of indie titles of when Steam Valve was a thing, drinks RC Cola, and I'm describing myself. Balls. That joke fell flat. Oh, my writing's so bad. Now... man, everything I write is cringe. Now, I don't know how many times the 3 laws were shown in the entirety of this game, but it pops up at least 10 times all throughout. Maybe 11 or 12 if you include the extras. I forget. It's one of my several complaints on the structure of the VN mechanically. Personally, it pops up just too many times. I know for the key concepts and the themes of the plot presented, understanding the 3 laws is important. But it pops up as a segue in between every chapter. Basically every time a new day, a prominently differing scene in a day, or a flashback to an important past event. It may be too early in the timeline for the Zeroth Law or Zero Law of robotics, but I can see that being a thing at some point too. But it's never mentioned. But it should be noted for later, as I've got some philosophical hypotheticals for when we wrap up this synopsis. Perhaps that can be a major part of the sequel, Lucy, the Eternity She Feared. Overall, these first several pages of opener and exposition weren't bad per se, as it mildly sets the tone on who our character is. He's a traditionalist. He appreciates the nuances in life. Maybe I've read too much and seen too much anime, mangas, sci-fis, and fantasy, but personally for me, the tone was set a bit cheeseball. Whatever. We find our unnamed protagonist walking home from school, wanting to take the shortcut through the robotics company's junkyard. With cheeseballs on my mind, I was half expecting our protagonist to exclaim, "The scrapyard of all lost hopes and dreams, an illusion." I can't read. "The scrapyard of all lost hopes and dreams, an illusion to my soul." Either way, we find ourselves seeing a quote-unquote fallen maiden in the rubble. Surprised and worried, we rush to the woman passed out in the junk, making note to not be seen by a security android, exclaiming that all robots are fundamentally stupid. Foreshadowing to possible feelings later in the story, perhaps. We will see. Once we find the girl, we realize that it's not an actual person, but a very well-made android. Too well-made physically to just be your regular commercial or domestic droid. By its hyper-realistic look, it even looks more advanced at face value to even the high-end androids your character has ever seen. A prototype more likely? But the question arises, why would the robotics lab just simply throw out such a well-made android? Some sympathy falls over ourselves, looking at the android, thinking that it'd be a waste just to leave it there. More hipster exposition follows. Classical music over rock, classic lit over pulp fiction. I was half expecting, since it is the future, retro rock over space rock, old school gangsta rap over space rap, classics like George R.R. Martin and Dan Brown over the new stuff, like Space X.R. Martin or Space Dan Brown. Then all of a sudden, the security android sees us and begins yelling in alarm that we should not be on the premise, covering our face to not be seen with any possible facial recognition or recording software from the android. We run, saying to ourselves that we really shouldn't take the android home, that it would be a stupid idea. We decide not to carry the android home. Goosebumps style plot twist. We take the girl android with us. Of course we do. There'd be no story otherwise. Either way, it's stated that our father hates androids. He sees robots to be the fall of humanity and makes us lazy. They take our work ethic. And once we find ourselves worthless in comparison, who's to say they couldn't simply replace us for the progression of civilization? They took your gerbs. All legitimate fears, really. Anyways, without spoiling the story, some interactions between Lucy and the main character occur that causes us to appreciate Lucy as an android and being a pubescent teen, despite our character reminding ourselves that Lucy is a robot, a machine, not a robot. Not I can't read. Despite our character reminding ourselves that Lucy is a robot, a machine, not a human. It's at times hard to differentiate the two, as seeing that Lucy is hyper-realistic, attractive, and essentially has the personality of a ditzy, cute, but naive girl who's just happy to be rescued from the junkyard. It's not written in my synopsis, but it should also be noted that if she didn't have the feature that all androids have just to differentiate them from humans is like this metal earpiece over the side of their ear and all that, our character probably wouldn't have recognized that she was an android. He would probably have just thought, oh, it's a real person. And she also has a serial number on her waist. Lucy's views are that androids are here to serve humanity. And whoops, it feels like I jumped somewhere. All right, but anyways, this isn't written in the synopsis, but let me just explain something real fast. Lucy's personality. If you didn't read this story, and this is the whole point of the book club. You got to read the stories, guys. You got to play the games. You got to play the games at least try them out. This one was a relatively short one, so you have no excuses this time. Lucy is super realistic. Her level of AI allows her to have emotions and level of consciousness and thought. And if you're going to argue with me on do robots have consciousness, let me go into a little thing about that after the synopsis, because I really thought about this, and it's kind of an interesting talk that I can get into with this. But so, if you're talking to Lucy in real life, it would be like actually talking to a real person. That's what it was. That's what Lucy made to be like. So, anyways, carry on. Lucy's views are that androids are here to serve humanity and has been pre-programmed with the 3 laws of robotics and a sense of morality built into her programming. She's been programmed to help people, and because of her emotions and personality, finds gratification when she is able to be helpful to others. She understands that she's merely a robot, a tool, and not a living organism, and is trying to find her purpose in life. Since she is essentially an elaborate tool, if she's not helpful or useful, she views herself as worthless and replaceable, taking the existential thought experiments of modern philosophers like Sartre or Camus to a different step and through the perspective of a hyper-intelligent human-like AI. I'm going into a tangent that I want to discuss later, so back on track to the story briefly. Basically, more things happen that help us understand both our character's perspective, a friend who's an android enthusiast's perspective, the robot repairman antique shop owner's perspective, parentheses, who has a love for robots, and Lucy's perspective, and our father's. Many questions are posed, ranging from the basic to the deeper. But as to not spoil the story, if you haven't played the game, I won't tell you what happens at the climax of the game. It really is gut-wrenching plot, but regardless if you get the quote-unquote true ending or the other neutral ending, I didn't find either ending to be really what I'd consider to be a bad ending. This includes the epilogues and follow-up extras. They were very touching, but only brought up some more philosophical questions about AI personally, and that sums up my brief synopsis. Some end notes I have here that it's going to help me here. So the big question that you're probably asking, which isn't important in any way, did I cry? Did this story make me cry? And the quick answer is no. It did give me the feels. It did make me sad. Some parts made me very angry because I was just like, man, some characters, including my character. I was like, man, my character's kind of a D-bag. But, so you can probably figure out what character I probably got angry at, mostly. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm just dead inside. You can blame that on my first wife, my ex-wife. That was a dark period for me. You can blame all that. my heart is dead. It's all black. If you cut me, I just bleed tar. So I guess that just comes with age. Now, but this posed some really interesting stuff, and I wanted to get into this. And maybe I'll actually create like a little video about like my views on AI, because it's quite interesting. Now, so explaining the characters real fast. So, the thing about Lucy, and it was mentioned in the game that I don't know where to start, man. There's so many things to try to cover here. I literally have like 15, 18 pages of notes, and it's bothering. I have like big questions posed. Let's just go through all these questions real fast. How would I deal with a realistically human robot that was also attractive and not in a relationship with anybody? So, our character is a lonely teen. His father is completely consumed by his job, and I can understand why that he would find companionship with Lucy, because it's, through the story, she wants to serve, your character, because she's an android. That's what she's supposed to do. She understands that fundamentally. And she's been pre-programmed to follow the 3 laws of robotics, and she's also been pre-programmed to be just a nice person. So that's what she wants to do. That's how she finds meaning in her existence. And since she does have that higher, like, conceptual thought process in her AI, she thinks about these things, and just like a regular person, she's able to think about this kind of stuff. Now, here's the question that you might be asking: Do these hyper intelligent AIs have, we got to clarify, do these hyper intelligent AIs have a consciousness? Do they have a soul? And do they have a spirit? And you may be thinking to yourself, well, soul and spirit are the same thing, and I'll go into detail on why that, depending on your perspective and whether or not you're holding true to the actual definition of like old school soul versus spirit. It's different. It is different. Now, the way I view consciousness, because we got to ask ourselves, is there a difference between the spirit and your consciousness? And most people would agree that there is. The consciousness is what's actually going on inside your brain. This can become your personality, how your emotions react, your thought process, your cognitive thought process, and it would also include, your deeper inside stuff, the id, the unconscious, what has built you as a person through your experiences in life, just unconsciously. Like, why are you afraid of the dark? You may not know. Why do you act a certain way when something happens a certain way? And you don't really have the good explanation on why. It could have been something that it's been caused by when you were a kid, or in middle school or high school, if you're like way older, when it happened when you were younger, that kind of stuff. What builds you as a person? And then you also have the ego, which is, your actual conscious thought, and then you have your super ego, which is the morals that you've been taught through your, as you grew up. So like, depending on the person, it could be a religious super ego that says, okay, well, the Bible, or if you're a different religion, the Quran, or if you're Jewish, the Torah, or all different kind of stuff. You can be like, okay, well, these are the morals that I hold important to myself, and this causes me to not. This gives me validation to say stealing is bad, killing is bad, all, different kind of stuff. How do you deal with a situation like this? How do you deal with a situation like that? Based off the morals and laws that I've set myself out to believe or learned over the years. That's your super ego. The overall social aspect of what creates morality and ethics and beliefs. Now, the real question, back to the question at hand, do AIs have consciousness? I would say yes. It doesn't necessarily mean they have a spirit, because mind you, a spirit is a metaphysical thing. A robot essentially is just a very complicated tool. And it's like saying, does my coffee cup have a spirit? Does my computer have a spirit? No, I wouldn't think it would, because it's a machine we've created ourselves. Spirits are not. We can't really confirm or deny that robots have it, because spirits are not a thing you can feasibly calculate, weigh, and see, you know? Does that make sense? So hopefully this is making sense. So, but what is the consciousness? A consciousness is any level of intelligence that allows a person or thing or an animal or whatever to have conceptual thoughts and decide things on their own. Like a dog has a consciousness. Now, regardless of whether or not you believe that dogs have souls or spirits, or, a bug has a spirit, I still believe they have conscious thought. Because a dog, this whole spirit thing is a whole different discussion. That goes into theology. But we're just talking about the consciousness for first thing. That is why I believe robots have consciousness, and why a hyper-intelligent AI would have consciousness. They can decide things on their own. They can think about things. And they could even come to the realization that, well, I believe these things because I've been pre-programmed with these things. And to some level, like Lucy did, she was like, well, I'm okay with this because it is what I hold as my own personal beliefs. This is important to me that I help people, and I need to be helpful. That's where I find value in my life. Similar to how a person might say to themselves, I find value in my life because of this, this, and this. And a question was posed, are we any different consciously than a hyper-intelligent AI? Because the consciousness itself, now if we get into the theological, saying what separates a consciousness from the spirit, we can say things like, well, the consciousness is the actual physical thing, like our mind and body, because our mind and body are still, controlled and gated and limited by what our brains can actually do, what our bodies are able to actually do. So if I'm genetically programmed to never go beyond a certain IQ, or never be able to really contemplate, other, extra dimensional, scientific theories or theological, metaphysical ideas that go beyond this universe, my brain literally cannot grasp those things, because genetically I am not able to do that. How smart can I actually get? What is the limitations of the brain, in my brain? Or in terms of the superego, or the ego itself, I set out these rules and morals for myself. That's what's pre-programming my actual emotions and consciousness. I find it, like me personally, I find it wrong when children are abused. I got super heavy for this. I find it personally wrong. But that's because this is not a bad thing, but this is because I've been pre-programmed, and you can almost say like brainwashed or taught this belief that it's wrong through my entire life. It's wrong. So anything connected to like an abuse or anything connected to injustice, I find it wrong, and it might spark some emotion in me. It might spark like either anger or like sympathy or empathy, or like the feeling that I want to create an act. I want to act upon something. I want to like right an injustice. That sort of stuff. That's who I am. And these sorts of things, I understand as well that I'm kind of pre-programmed to think that way, because now that I have kids, I'm more protective over kids. If I see a kid be like beat up, I might actually step up and be like, yo, stop that. Knock that off. That's not cool. That sort of stuff. Now here's the thing. I thought this was all quite interesting. So that's consciousness. That's consciousness. It's all what's going on in our brain. But our brain, we got to understand that our brain is physical, and our thoughts are technically physical, because our thoughts are created by synapses in between the neurons, which with a hyper-intelligent AI, you can say, well, their thoughts, if they're actually trying to think this stuff through, even though it might be like instantaneous, or like it might take a few seconds, they might think to themselves, okay, these are thoughts in my brain. These are thoughts in my computer board. It's almost the same thing. And it actually brought up some interesting things that I remembered, that they were actually trying to create a 3D processor, which sounds a little weird, but if you know how computers are built, everything is actually built on a 2D plane, but it would be more efficient if certain processors and microprocessors and chips and all that were built 3D. So instead of just a 2D plane, you build it up into a 3D plane, similar to how our brain actually works, with different like synapses going on back and forth. But in the case of a computer, it's like different sparks and bits flying back and forth, yeses and nos and lights going on and off. So this is like a really bad analogy, but so that kind of but we're not there yet. They've built them. So yeah, technically we're there, but they can't make it stable because it burns out really easily because it's using a lot of computer power. But I feel like if the computer is programmed, if you look at it this way, the actual programming and writing in the script of the AI is like the genes. Those are the DNA of the computer's thoughts. And then if the computer can actually think for itself and try to grasp more complicated ideas, at that point it's its brain. And that's why I believe androids have consciousness, or like a hyper intelligent AI would have consciousness. Correcting myself, because just because a AI doesn't have a body to walk around in, it's not it doesn't mean it doesn't have an AI. Now going on to spirit and soul, we need to distinguish the difference. So according to Greek philosophy, soul is actually the body, like what actually the in between the spirit and the consciousness, between the spirit and the mind, the in between, what actually comes out, what makes the whole conglomeration of everything put together, that is your soul. So in a sense, AIs could have a soul because it's like, okay, well that's just everything that makes them up, makes them. Now, talking about the spirit, that is the metaphysical, and going into religious stuff. In the end, an AI, android, robot, machine is just a machine we've created, and can't really say they have spirits. Also, whether or not you're going to argue with me and say that they do, there is no way to argue for or against this, seeing as that there's really no way to like measure a spirit, like say, oh, there it is, there it is, that you can't be like, oh, my spirit weighs 30 pounds, 30 spirit pounds. You can't do that. It's not possible. So that's my views and like clarification on what consciousness is versus the spirit versus the soul of something, and putting myself into the situation, it really got me thinking about like, how would I actually truly deal with an android? I think what was so refreshing about this game is just the talks about androids and what the actual moral things of how to actually deal with androids, because regardless of whether or not we like it or not, AI is coming, and it's closer now than it ever was. Like maybe 20 years ago I wouldn't have really given it serious thought, but I feel like modern entertainment just needs to like really catch up with the times, because any times we get like anything about androids and AI, it's always like one of two things. It's always like they're intelligent equals, or they're just far more intelligent, or they're evil. So, and want to destroy humanity. And what do I mean like that? Well, we've got Transformers. Transformers, they're basically equals. I'm not sure what the Transformers are. Are they hyper intelligent AI, or are they actually mechanical life? I would say more on terms of like mechanical life, but that's the level of robot sci-fi that we get. And then the other flip of the coin, we get something like Ex Machina or Terminator, where it's like robots are scary, damn scary. It's like they'll always try to take over. But with something like Ex Machina and coming into like how Lucy is, the question is, with a learning AI that starts off at square one, is it really the AI's fault? Because it's like at that point we can comparatively, even though it's a simpler example and analogy, it'd be like training a dog and raising a dog. It's like nurture versus the argument of nurture versus nature. It's like, how are you teaching this AI to act? What does it know to be normal interaction between other people? Does it understand? Are you teaching it morals? Are you following certain ideals. And in Lucy, the eternity she wished for, they really hammered down that like the three laws of robotics. And I have a problem with the three laws of robotics, but we'll get into that later because something quite interesting happens. But anyways, I feel like I'm rambling. This might be a bit too dry, but leave your comments down below if this discussion's getting too heady. Now, because with Lucy, there were a couple moments thinking about nature versus nurture. You've got Lucy, who, when Dr. Gears finally meets Lucy, he's just astounded and like just intrigued by how well made of a robot and how real, lifelike, human-like her personality is. And he's like, I can't. This is amazing. This is astonishing. And he's also kind of checking her out because, kind of creepy. Everybody's kind of creepy. Your character's the only one that's not like really, really creepy. I feel like I was right about this, but I feel like she was created by an old man because there is something along the lines of one of the funnier moments. He was like, she's very pretty, blah, 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 attractive. Her eyes and her chest. Well, that's what it was. And your character's like, get these thoughts out of your head. She's a robot. She's a robot. That's getting weird, So, anyways, what happened was like he was like, well, what do you have anything like any other special features? And she's thinking to herself, she's like, well, I don't know if I'd call this a special feature. And they're like, well, what? She's like, I can do impersonations. And they're like, impersonations? All right, well, try one. And she starts doing impersonations, and they start off quite like innocent, and then Dr. Gears is like now like interjecting like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And they're relatively innocent, and then they turn into the point of not so innocent and very demeaning. And she doesn't understand. Doing roles from movies where like basically a flirty coworker at a party that drank too much alcohol, or a hooker from a movie or whatever, that kind of stuff. And she's able to do it, and she's absolutely fine with it because it's not that she understands that it's demeaning to her personally or it's shameful to do this kind of stuff, but she finds it she thinks it's a good thing. She thinks doing any impersonation is a good thing because it brings joy to humanity, and that's what she's been taught. So again, nature versus nurture. As an android, she doesn't fully understand the social norms of people. So it's funny because it's like, and then our character smacks her in the head and is like, all right, knock this off. We're getting out of here, And she's like, what? Why are you angry? And it's like, you have no shame. And she's confused and like, oh, okay, well, I didn't think about that. All right, well, I need to take a quick break. So I'll be back. So I had to leave for work because I was looking. I took a quick glance at my watch and I was like, "Oh boy, I gotta go now. I gotta go now, or I'm gonna be late." I was just like, "Okay, well then." I hate to be pulling back that curtain of like how things are produced over here on my end, but I got a life to deal with over here, so that's one of the reasons why I'm not able to always keep up on schedules and stuff, because sometimes my work schedules and life schedules with like family life and work, it goes up and down, and I'm normally doing something every single day, so like it's kind of hard to like just kind of set aside a certain amount of time to record or edit or like write efficiently and productively, because sometimes like when I'm writing it might take like an extra 30 minutes, or like I might need like a few hours to really let things boil in my head, or like if I'm trying to capture footage, sometimes just capturing footage for videos just takes forever. Anyways, because I'm pulling from like a whole bunch of different systems, I'm just like, oh boy. That's why the VGTs are always rough. Anyways, welcome back. I'm sorry about that little bit of a break, and I've completely derailed my thought train here, but I think it was good that I took a little bit of a break, because I felt like maybe my energy level was going a little bit down because I had been recording for about an hour and 45 minutes, and I didn't realize I was recording for that long, so I apologize. This is one of the long ones. I'm sorry. Hopefully y'all like long form content. I don't know. This is the big AI special. So I thought to myself, okay, well, you know what? I'm actually just gonna run through all my notes, because I have literally, let's count this. They're written double-sided, but in terms of actual pages of paper, yeah, there's literally about 17 pages of notes here, and that's a little ridiculous. It's not all like super organized, but I was just taking notes as the story went on. And at the end, I have a attachment of just a whole bunch of different questions posed here. They're not the best questions, but because there's questions all throughout this. So I think for now, instead of going into like a deeper talk of like different types of like questions that may be posed, I'm actually just going to go through the storyline with the questions that are posed throughout the story, if that makes any sense. Also, it was a good idea to take a break, because in between the time that I had started recording and work and then coming back to it today, my father, who I was actually talking about and trying to like bounce some ideas off of, because he's really into sci-fi. He knows his sci-fi stuff better than me. And I figured, okay, well, I'm familiar with all this. He's familiar with all this. And he can actually pull references from like books he's read from like Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke and the I suddenly can't remember his name. The guy that wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is what the movie Blade Runner is based off of, with Deckard. I'm really worried about that movie. It's getting a reboot later this year, but I'm really worried about it, because I'm like, man, there's not going to be. I highly doubt a modern sci-fi is going to really try to cover the intricacies of like ethical arguments behind like intelligent AI, because there's a lot of things proposed. But anyways, what I want to say about what my father had told me, he actually texted me a few links to some interesting articles about AI with the Hong Kong Tech Show, and then like please excuse the conversation, but this is actually just an ethical conversation about AI that is important. But the ethicality of sex bots. So if you've seen the movie AI with Haley Joel Osment in it, you know what a sex bot is. It's basically an android prostitute. Because if the robot itself has some sort of like, cognitive sentience, regardless of whether or not it has a spirit or not, it still has thoughts, and it still has an AI, a consciousness working within its mainframe and all that. So the ethicality of, that, and saying, well, is it ethical to have that? Because at the same time, it'd be kind of considered like a bestiality, because when people, this is getting into like real dark territory, so I apologize. But other than just being wrong, one of the arguments of ethicality against bestiality is that the animals themselves don't have full control of the situation. They don't have a choice in the matter. It's like it's you can't say that there is consent or there isn't consent, because we can never know, and they will never be able to tell us. And whether or not they understand entirely what's going on, we'll never know. That's one of the argument, like legal arguments against bestiality. So outside of it just being gross and wrong and all sorts of disgusting junk, that's sort of, it's, when people like create these laws and like get into like philosophical discussions with like lawmakers and like theologists, these are the types of like reason. So you have to like, regardless of whether or not you know it's wrong or right, or whether something is right or wrong, you normally have to pull up some sort of evidence or some sort of argument to base it off of. And this is one of the arguments that comes across it. So it's a similar idea because throughout the story of Lucy, the eternity she wished for, one of the things that happens a lot is that your character ends up becoming kind of very protective over Lucy, because you realize that yeah, she is just a robot at heart. She doesn't have skin and bone like us. She's not human, and for all argument purposes, she's not alive. She's a robot. She's a machine. She's a thing. But regardless of that, she still has a consciousness, and she still has a personality and emotions, and a consciousness that learns from the experiences that she's taught, and lessons and morals that are ingrained, hardwired, which yeah is programmed in, but at the same time the character also asks the question, are we not the same? Are we as human beings that grow up not the same with our hardwired beliefs? Now, follow me here. It's one of those things where it's like he talks about brainwashed, and at some level he'll always hate androids because his father has always hated androids, and that's just the belief that he's been hammered with all through his life. So yeah, that would be an unconscious thing for him. This is a hypothetical. If I have a fear of the dark, or if I have a fear of the water, actually let's go with the fear of the water, because I really do actually have a fear of water, despite myself liking boats and being on boats. I love being on boats, but I hate being in water. That's weird, I know, but I may not completely understand why I have a fear of water, but there is a reason for it. Not everybody's afraid of water. Some people love water, and that makes me different from everybody else, or the same as a few other people. So my fear of water probably stems from a whole bunch of stuff, maybe from when I was an infant, because my fear of water has always been there. And it only got stronger over time because I would sometimes watch things like Rescue 911 growing up. Now, that's a throwback, if anybody knows that show. But Rescue 911 is basically like cops, but with like doctors and ambulances, and sometimes you'd have like kids that fall into a pool unconscious, and then like they'd have to resuscitate them with CPR, and that probably scarred me as a kid. And I'd see a movie like Jaws, and then that would probably scar me as a kid with water and the beach. These sorts of things where I can't necessarily pinpoint exactly where my fear of water stems from. It could be a number of things, or it could be just one thing. I can't be sure, but that's an unconscious emotion that rises up inside me anytime I'm in any kind of precarious situation with water. Same thing with heights. If anybody has a fear of heights, that might actually stem from something or a few different events that just end up fortifying that emotion that comes with being on ladders or up high. Now, what's my personal thing with heights? It's kind of funny. I do have a fear of heights, but I love getting on ladders, and I love walking on catwalks, and I love going up in like cherry pickers and scissor lifts. But it's a weird thing. Maybe I'm just a thrill seeker at heart, but that sort of stuff. Now, what is the conscious? What is the id? That is all the thoughts and emotions you can actually perceive. Does this make any sense? Okay. So with that in mind, do we truly have the question is, do we truly have free will in our thoughts? Because our thoughts and feelings that come up because of certain situations are derived from things we have been hardwired and learned. I'm really wording this very poorly. I'm wording very poor. Bleh. I can't speak the word. But are we not the same with these hardwired beliefs? We were taught through both the environment we grew up in, through the lessons we've learned, through the experiences we've had, and the lessons we've learned from our teachers, our parents, the people around us, and the societal groups around us, like the church, the state, the laws, ethical groups, whatever it may be. Those are the beliefs that we're taught. So the question is, are we not the same? Are we almost a form of brainwashing? Brainwashing isn't necessarily a bad thing. Don't take that quote out of context. Brainwashing is not a bad thing. Do. No, no, no. Because that's just how we work. That's how we learn. And we might stay, regardless of our whether or not our beliefs stay the same all throughout our lives, are based upon what happens in our environment and what happens around us with the people that we interact with the things that we interact with. Whether or not our beliefs change is from what we learn. And to say they completely change, we can never really be sure. So, a learning AI be the same thing consciously. That's why it'd be unethical to treat an intelligent AI at a very subpar level, at a non-living level. It goes into this idea that I had spewing through my head. It's like, how do I treat animals? How do I treat the things around me? I treat everything around me with a level of respect. I don't usually break things. I rarely ever do. Unless it's an accident. Like if and that's one of the problems, that came across like in the story when the character's father is just trying to find every single little problem just to get mad at Lucy. So what he does is he knows Lucy will follow through with an order, so he orders Lucy to do all the laundry from his work, which is an impossible task. She won't be able to finish it. Plus, clean out the shed. So it's like this giant pile of like baskets and baskets and baskets of laundry. The entire laundry room is filled, and your character comes home early and realizes what's going on and is like, oh, that son of a, that bastard, and you have the choice of helping her or not. In the story, I helped her because I figured, okay, well, this is what I would probably do in a situation like this. It's like, because it's not that Lucy is necessarily a person, but she's being, as an intelligent consciousness, she's being taken advantage of. It's like, I don't know, if a dog can walk and talk and think like us, but would do everything you say it would tell it to do because it has the alpha dog person, the alpha dog syndrome of like, oh, you're my master, I'm your dog, I'll try to do what you tell me to. If it's one of those things where it's just an impossible task and it's unfair. Does this make any sense? So what happens is that obviously, okay, she with your help she does finish all the laundry, but she doesn't have time to get to the shed. And the shed is a stupid task to ask for because in the story the shed hasn't been cleaned out or even opened or touched in years. So it's probably covered in dust, it's probably filled with a whole bunch of junk, all sorts of stuff. But she does end up finishing it, and your father comes home and realizes what's going on and gets crazy upset and ends up shoving Lucy down to the ground, and she shuts down temporarily. Now the question, and this goes back to a level of respect, and regardless of whether or not you believe Lucy has a level of consciousness or not, it's like as if, if I'm overworking my computer, let's say here's a hypothetical situation. If I'm trying to edit a video for YouTube and my computer isn't the best. I know this. I don't have like the best gear over here on my end, and this is just a fact. If I'm trying to like run both Audacity, Windows Movie Maker, and I'm trying to like create like a massive like 30-minute project that's highly edited with a whole bunch of like random stuff going in at the same time. I have my internet browser running at the same time. I have like other things running at the same time. If I'm overclocking my computer, it's going to crash. And once it does crash, do I get upset at the computer? Or should I be more upset at myself for forcing my computer to work so hard? And if my computer does crash, or if for some reason my computer gets a virus, am I going to get mad at my computer and then shove it to the ground? Will that fix the situation? Will that, it's no, obviously no. That makes no sense. There's no logical sense in that. Maybe I'm just emo maybe I'm just an emotionally broken human being because of what happened to me maybe about like it was about 5 years ago. But it's caused me to go back to my logical uh, level-headed, common sense a bit more. I don't know. When I was a kid growing up, I always tried to think things out as critically as possible because I looked up to Spock, and I actually tried to study what logic was, and I was always enamored by the idea of logic and the philosophy of logic. And it doesn't mean I'm good at logic puzzles, but which is kind of a funny thing. But I always tried to like take my emotions out and then step away from things, and it's always been a thing for me. And I think through some personal crises that occurred to me about 5 years ago, that only went up 10 par. But I don't feel like it's a bad thing. It's not that I'm shutting out my emotions. I'm very well aware of my emotions, but maybe I am slowly reaching that level of Spock. I don't see that as a bad thing. So, anyways, yeah, with that, anyways, what my point was is the ethicality of treating robots and intelligent, semi-sentient AI as just things and lower entities in society. How do we treat them? These questions will be arising within like the next few to 10, maybe 20 years at the latest. And another article my dad threw at me, which was the Hong Kong tech show with these two AI robots talking to each other and discussing, made me think. And the it was through Hanson Laboratories or something like that, and it was this guy robot and this girl robot who were role playing the roles of like brother and sister, because if you were to say that they're living, they would be brother and sister because they're from the same creators, you know what I mean, like the same scientists. So technically they're brother sister, technically, if they're alive, but they're androids, they're robots, they're artificial AI. So really they're not, but that's beyond the point. That's not part of the argument here. The demonstration was them having a free-flowing conversation with each other and joking about things and talking about like the ethicalities of AI and their role and with humans and things. And the guy had stated that of course it was partially scripted, but at the same time there was ad-libbing involved as well that they didn't account for. And that was part of the program. That was part of how they were supposed to interact with each other. Like they would just learn from each other and just, interact from based off of what the other one was saying in the conversation. So, and the guy, the lab researchers were saying that fully functional, independent AI is plausible within the next few years. What they presented at the tech show was just a test, was just a presentation of things to come. And it's making me realize, holy balls, this AI argument and these AI topics are going to be coming up even more in the future. Very, very soon. These kind of things are coming up really fast. And that's only a few years from now, when we might actually have independently working and learning AI. Not anything like, super, super out there, maybe, but we're getting there. The baby steps are happening at this point. And I know it's been this kind of stuff has been going on for maybe about 20 years now, but it's crazy to think about. So, if this feels like a type of discussion that's not very important, we need it. I don't mean to sound like degrading or like what's the word? I need my coffee. It feels like I'm being rude. I apologize, but if you don't believe that the AI are coming anytime soon, I think both you and I need to wake up a bit. And it's not something to be scared of necessarily, because regardless of whether or not you or I oppose of, intelligent, sentient, free-thinking AI, there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to create, it's going to want to create this, and it's going to be out of our control. Even if you petition against one laboratory, another laboratory is going to be working on it. There's always going to be something. You can't stop technological progress. You can only slow it down. So this type of AI to some degree is inevitable. And whether or not we're going to see it in the next 3 years or 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, Who knows? It's inevitable. And I always believed that it was inevitable, but I just want to clarify that that's what I believe, and I think it is inevitable. I don't think it's an argument that can really be argued against. So back on track to my notes. So this is all like disjointed and disorganized, but bear with me. So my problem with the three laws of robotics, we'll get into that in a second. Main characters, you have the protagonist, Lucy Valentine, aka PIM-001, the doctor, Dr. Ryu, who is Lucy's creator, and the repairman, who's an android robot lover enthusiast, and possibly a robot rights activist in a parallel universe. I wrote that down. Delicate creatures, not expensive toys. He's one of them. That was one of my notes, because that was a quote from the repairman. They're delicate creatures, not expensive toys. Dr. Gears, who's a student at your school and a friend, owner of roughly 6 androids from a well-to-do family. There's a lot of callbacks to Asimov and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, aka Blade Runner, and the Zeroff Law, which, how did that go? I forget. I'm looking this up real fast. So, just to clarify because it's going to pop up a whole bunch, but the 3 laws of robotics, let's get this down. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given given it to by the processing control or authority except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Law number 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Which this basically is a safeguard that the idea is that you would program these laws of robotics into an AI or teach it into an AI or something like that and basically hardwire the robot to never harm a human being. You know what I mean? That way you don't have the chance of a robot revolution. That's the idea behind it. There are flaws to this. And there's also even scientific, realistic flaws to this. Because it is a work of fiction and it is a device that Asimov used in his books to clarify how, scientists would create AI. But we'll get into that later. The Zero Law of Robotics is in Robots and Empire, one of the last books in the Robot series, was actually created by 2 sentient robots that really thought of how human society was progressing and what their roles were in society as androids and AI. So the law that they had come up with was a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. No, that's not right. Okay, there you go. That's the first law. The Zeroff Law is a robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. That was a law that was added by the 2 robots to supersede all the other laws. Now the big problem with this is that the logical process of this is that to progress humanity and to make civilization better and progress and not digress, hurting people, and one of the logical chains that they come to is to benefit humanity. Some humans will need to be sacrificed, will need to die, and it's not that they're killing them off. It's more like but it is almost a type of culling. And it's not even so much because it's the idea that the sacrifice of one to benefit the many. And this comes into a parallel to something from Star Trek with the Vulcans. And bear with me on this because they have almost a similar identical quote of the sacrifice of one to benefit the whole. And the idea behind this is, sometimes you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. You got to, it's going to happen. And these sorts of things are inevitable in certain scenarios. So, but the big difference that my dad was trying to clarify between what the robots were doing in Asimov's books and the Vulcans in Star Trek is that the Vulcans wouldn't force this on you. They would because they still have that level of ethics of saying, well, you're still a conscious, free thinking individual, but please take this into consideration. If that makes any sense, you have to do it up. Do it. You have to sacrifice yourself upon your own volition, because if you do that, it's ethical. Because yeah. Granted, it sucks, but you're still helping everybody. You're not forcing someone. You're not drawing straws and being like, oh, well, you're the one that's going to jump off the cliff, buddy. I'm sorry, It's not that sort of thing. But either way, both are, essentially a logically based culling. Okay, what was the other things? Oh, you prefer analog, blah, 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 hipster. We've already covered that. Lucy's the uncanny valley creepy both ways, built for a male clientele. That chest seems, well, we've already covered that. That's weird. What will my father say when he finds a pretty girl bought in my son's room? That's creepy. I prefer you stick to Google. Google, mags, and Kleenexes. God, my notes are terrible. Remembers Lucy's there. Tall nose, luscious lips, provocative clothing, her glinting of silver hair. Pretty face to boot. Don't get the wrong idea. Just because she's attractive doesn't mean I'm interested. Since she's a robot, that's racist. It's like checking out a girl from a magazine, except that feeling is amplified tenfold in this case. Shot of weird Asian potty. No mom? Well, mom would freak on weird personal explorations. To the realism of how Lucy is created, she's warm to the touch to simulate human warmth. Surprisingly human-like, not cold like a robot. At this point, in all caps, I wrote down, what the hell am I playing? Simulates human body temperature. Because I was really questioning the family-friendly nature of this visual novel. Robot repair shop. Told him the true story, cracked a line. No, okay, there are spoilers, because I'm just going through all my notes through the whole thing. Told him the true story, cracked a line. Repairman laughed. I'm off the hook. Something reminds the character of an old sci-fi movie from 2050 comes to mind. I put down Michael Bay's Transformers. There's a lunch sequence where we eat a croquette and our mind is blown. Just kidding, it's a lie. Dr. Gears talks about not falling in love with robots as a caution. Foreshadowing. Back at the repair shop, Lucy is suddenly very human. Simulated emotions, playful, proper personality. And I apologize for my alliteration. She's heading the shop as the repairman's out and about and grabbing for, like, supplies or whatever. And, you keep asking, well, who's the person? And she's like, it's me, She's not saying it's me directly. She's like, ahem. Hey, I'm implying that she's the one in charge, and you're just like, whatever. And I realize that my character's a D-bag, and she gets sad. Oh yeah, I needed to cross-reference this. But at one point, our character analyzes how Lucy is acting, and assuming what her desires consciously are, and I cross-reference two stories. I already know one off the top of my head because I read the story and it's kind of sad. But the actual story of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, if you want to ever look that up, which is what the movie is based off, the Disney movie is based off of, but the Disney movie doesn't really follow the actual story. It's only inspired by. And then a nine-tailed fox who desired to be human, the Little Mermaid who desired to be human. ... Uh-oh. Foreshadowing. Another note, dude, my character's a dick. And when we're about to leave, the repairman jumps in my face and is like, please let me have Lucy. And he's being creepy about it. And he tries to pawn a deal, and Lucy's getting scared like a slave being sold at auction. Because she has to follow orders, so regardless of whether or not you take the pawn deal or not, she knows she has to comply with it. Of course you don't, because you feel like it's a creepy situation because the repairman's really infatuated with Lucy. So, ugh. There's an Iron Man joke. There's a bunch of like fun references all throughout this, and it's quite funny. I never got tired of seeing looks. A quote from my character: I never got tired of seeing Lucy look so depressed. Yes, my character's a sadistic D-bag. We give, she needs to take it easy on her new parts. So we decide to piggyback Lucy all the way home. And then we realize that she smells like she has like a nice like aroma to her, like a perfume, a fruity young girl, but with maturity. And I wrote ... puberty. My character is obviously a teen. Lucy explains. Repairman said Lucy is a girl and needs to treat herself with care. So he gave her all sorts of gifts, perfumes, makeups. Both a player and myself, both yeah, both a character in game and myself agree that he's a robo creeper. Pleasant talk. Lucy's AI seems to be at human singularity, childlike, because of learning and experiencing things anew. Locked in lab. October 13th, daddy issues, work before family, fight punched in the face, talking back, locked in room. Yeah, that was really fast, but that was a intense scene. I was just kind of like reading it without taking notes. Flashback to when Lucy wakes. dorA.thI Hadouken introduces himself as the creator of Lucy getting weird. Cherish my name. So dorA.thI also came off. It was a little weird as well. Maybe that's how a doctor-like character would actually blah. Okay, let's just jump to like some interesting quotes here. It'd be a relief in itself if nothing happens to you behind my back. Oh, that's not one of the... Yeah, because at that point we start getting worried about Lucy's safety around our father. Foreshadowing. People see only what they want to see and build a world with only what they can see. Apparently a quote from Schopenhauer. I've heard that quote before. I'm not sure where it's from. 3 simple laws. It's easy can be seen. October 19th. Please don't comment on where that jingle is from. I hate that show. On the way home, Lucy's not waiting. Something seems off. She's not home. We go look for her. No one's seen her. And then we find her at the junkyard. And some deep thoughts occur. And here's some quotes. Even if Lucy's memory chips break down from rust, even if Lucy becomes no longer able to think properly. Lucy always talks to herself in third person, so if you didn't play the game, you wouldn't know this. Lucy believes that at the very least she will never forget her meeting with Master. Lucy was definitely saved. Lucy explains some situations about walking to the store by herself, and we realize that she's being creeped on by horn dogs, being like, "Hey, lady, we can have a fun time later tonight." And she's like, "Yay, okay, maybe later, but I'm on a mission to go to the store and go back home, and all that." And then we decide it's not safe for Lucy to walk around by herself because she's going to get taken advantage of. 3 martial laws. Fight, fatality, wrong game. October 22nd. Man, my notes are so stupid. Phil to wake up. Lucy gets us, checks our temperature, and we're at 38.5 degrees Celsius, which is 101.3 degrees Fahrenheit. Caught a cold, we take the day off. Oh, some funny interaction. She mentions the secret treasure under the bed of teens. So, to some degree, Lucy knows about naughty mags, but she didn't find anything. And you think to yourself, well, that's too obvious of a spot to hide things. It's going to be in my history books. And then she mentioned about going through, and then she found the interesting things in his bookshelf in between the pages of the history books that no one would ever touch. There's a dream sequence, bad dream of childhood with birth mother. Never really explained. Lucy was holding my hand. Oh, this little interaction was kind of funny. Realizing that Lucy was at his side the entire time, taking care of him, our character being the lonely individual that he is, not having like a strong parental figures or a family situation, he just gives her a hug. Not anything weird, not anything creepy, just needs a hug. And Lucy actually seems kind of uncomfortable with this. She doesn't know how to really take this all in. So there's silence, and you're just hugging her, and then she responds. She breaks the silence with, with all due respect, just tell me. To ensure safe sexual practice, Lucy wanted to let Master know that an age verification is required before any further physical intimacy is allowed. Don't be ridiculous. You're ruining the moment. Crap. Well, my quiet, unspoken question was answered. Yes, she's just like Data. Some words and apology, and she returns with a warm hug and smiles. is talking. Ryu may care more for Lucy's existence as her creator. A Dr. Light Mega Man situation. This is when I really started making connections to Mega Man and illusions and scenarios in my head. Or at least Dr. Ryu, in the best case scenario, is like Dr. Light. Ryu replies, "We can't find a master until the go from the authorities. May take a while. They're scared." Dr. Ryu doesn't actually believe that it will actually happen. No. Lucy asks, "Is Lucy scary? Are people scared of Lucy?" Ryu replies, "Quite a lot of them are, actually." "Is Doctor scared?" "No. Most people here share the same sentiment, but there may be people that put up a front to not show it." At this point, Lucy is sad because she can't grasp the understanding. People believe that Lucy is a Pandora's box. You can learn beauty from art, the world from science, life from religion, and man from robots. Afraid to see a reflection of themselves? My answer to this was no, the fear of survival, replacement, the carnal fear of competition. It's not, maybe for some people, creating human-like androids and AI may be a fear of seeing a reflection of themselves, but I also, it's a base fear of being replaced. We don't want humanity to completely disappear and be replaced by robots. I feel like the visual novel was stating it, like saying that wasn't the issue. It was actually the other way around, the seeing yourself in a mirror. She wants to engrave a positive memory in Master's heart. That's why Lucy hopes that Master will always remember her. Joke. At this point, I was like, this seems like a goodbye. All of a sudden, her core fails. She explodes via Proto-Man, presumably after the power battles. I forget. Boom! Always remember me. My car is failing. Atomic blast. And destroys like a quarter of the city. Carrying on, Lucy says, being able to live on in Master's memories for all eternity. This is the eternity Lucy wishes for. Roll credits. Never mind. I'm not going to read anymore. Alright, so if you played the game, I unlocked the extra epilogue Unto Eternity and Reunion. And some interesting stuff. Now, the question is, one thing I want to leave y'all with this on the story itself is, now, I wouldn't consider, if Lucy was a real android in real life, I wouldn't really consider her to be a threat. I wouldn't consider her to be dangerous as an individual robot, because it's like a Dr. Light Mega Man situation. Dr. Light creates all his closest robots to have morals and good values in them, so they're not going to want to do something wrong. And even if they understand that that's how they're programmed, they still find gratification in helping people. That's their goal as a robot, as an android. So I don't really find them to be a danger. But here's the thing, and my biggest problem with the 3 laws of robotics. The 3 laws of robotics are not laws, scientific laws in the sense. They're, if anything, just legal laws that roboticists would impose on themselves and in trying to create robots and constructing their personality. They don't want robots to suddenly go psychotic and kill people. Now, here's the thing. Not everybody's going to follow that. At some point, even if our character, later in the story, our character basically becomes Dr. Light and the true ending, and does this mean that inevitably there's going to be a Dr. Wily, someone that doesn't care about the moralities of putting ethics into a robot? Will we have a Dr. Wily that wants control, that wants to govern all the robots, that wants to take over the world? Or, in a different sense, are we going to have a Dr. Wily that doesn't put these ethics into the robots? Because it's not a law of robotics. It's just a law you impose on yourself. Also, the laws of robotics is just, in all seriousness, for a real situation, it's just an idea. It's just an idea, and it's a literary device that Asimov used to simplify the idea of programming ethics into robots. So, regardless of this, even if our character becomes Dr. Light, I feel like regardless of the situation, we've doomed us. What ultimately will occur, and the story, the visual novel never covers this, but what ultimately will occur is that you will have a Dr. Wily, and you will have like evil robots at any given point, and what happens at that point, you can never know. Will it be a good situation? Will you be able to confront it? Or are we going to have a Terminator style apocalypse? Who knows? So that was kind of the oops situation for me. Either way, I thought that was quite interesting. There's a lot of there's so many things like going through this visual novel that and it made me think, and it's not even so much like things I'm not acquainted with or ideas or concepts I'm not acquainted with, but there are ideas and concepts I don't usually get to talk about with anybody because or even like think about when I'm like ingesting like popular media like current sci-fis because I want to state this again, and I know I stated it before, but like modern current contemporary sci-fis don't really cover the ethics of AI. And when they do, it's like a fear-mongering thing, or it's like they're at the same level. But really, I guess you can argue with Nex Machina. Nex Machina is a great game. No, Ex Machina, the movie. You can say the androids in there are scary and they're evil. But is that because that's how they were educated? That's the environment they were growing up in. Because the scientists creating them is like a Dr. Wily. They're not ethical. They're not treating his robots with respect. He just sees them as toys, expensive toys or tools or just things. And if they do have sentience, they're going to want to escape. They're going to want to have in equal intellectual grounds. Regardless of whether or not they're working for you or not, they're still going to want to be treated like intellectual equals to a degree. So, is it really the robot's fault in Ex Machina? It's a real question that I pose on you, the listener. Leave your comments down below. This is all like really disjointed and scatterbrained, so I apologize. This podcast is a mess. I'm sorry. Anyways, yeah, also sci-fis these days, it's just like, it's all fantasy. It's all just, or either it's human introspection like Interstellar and goes into the metaphysical, what a human existence actually really means, and doesn't really go into the details of like actual science fiction. It goes into details of like human introspection and the metaphysical and cosmological, ideas. And I don't feel like talking about androids and AI has been like a real big, heavy thing since the 80s and 70s and maybe the 90s. And it's something I want you to consider. Regardless of what your beliefs are, whether or not you agree with me or not, this is going to be one of those times when I say I'm not necessarily right. I'm being serious when I say this. I may not necessarily be 100% right here. Because, I always joke with my little arrogant persona that I say, well, I'm the sensei, I'm always right. This time I'm going to say I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure if I'm right about AI here. And I want you to think about it. And I posed a question to myself. How would I treat an AI like Lucy? Now, if I was like the character, a teenager, yes, I'd be physically attracted because I'd be a horny, pubescent teenager. Teenagers do crazy things, and if you're a teen yourself, I apologize. I mean no disrespect. It's just you don't realize it until you hit maybe like 23, 25. But man, we go through a lot of hormones, and we go through a lot of feels. Everything makes us cry, everything makes us happy, everything makes us sad. And that's why some teens do crazy things. You may not do it yourself, and you may realize, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. But not all teens are like that. Some people don't grow out of it until they're like 27, 28. And that's just a fact of how we grow up as people. Some people never grow out of it. But anyways, so how would I... But I would still understand Lucy's an android, and I think the reason why this visual novel like really made me think and really affected me like in my thoughts was the fact that it is a game. It's not just like watching a movie, and this is one of those things that what makes video games so such a unique, impressive like medium, an art form, an entertainment, or whatever you want to classify it as. It really depends on the game. It depends on the movie as well. It's because with a movie, yeah, you might think about these kind of questions, but you're an outsider looking in on characters. With a video game, you are the character and you're presented with choices. You're presented with scenarios. So, some level, it's more personal. It begins hitting you at a gut level because it's not just you're watching characters do things and you have no control over it. You are now the character and you have full control of what happens. Well, to some degree, obviously, because there's predestined storylines in the game, but that's not the point. And I think that's why, even though, all these concepts, sci-fi concepts, are things I've seen before, none of these ideas are really new to me. I've read stories and seen discuss these sorts of sci-fi ideas for years, for roughly, let's say, 20 years at this point. Yeah, since I was in middle school, or even elementary school to some degree. I'm familiar with these. I grew up with Star Trek. I grew up with so it's even 20 plus years that I've been somewhat familiar with these topics. And maybe in a different circumstance, if this was a movie, it wouldn't have made me thought for more than a week, but it really made me think, and it's making me very curious about an artificial AI's perspective, because if they're going to be logical like a robot, at the same time, if they're programmed with emotion, how will they learn? How do they perceive the world around them? If they're connected to the internet, they have a limitless amount of information that they can consume, and not all of it will make sense, and they're going to get a few things wrong. And how are they going to deal with that? It's just interesting ideas to really think about. If you have more questions to pose, please leave your comments down below, and maybe we can get some discussion about this. This is quite interesting. If you have links to other YouTube videos, please no links to outside sources outside of YouTube. I want my community to be safe with computer viruses. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave. If you want to link something, try to link it to something on YouTube, or just reference it to an outside source. Anyways, I think that's about it. So let's just talk about what I thought about the visual novel Lucy the Eternity She Wished For, or the Eternity, or the sequel, the proposed sequel that I'm thinking of, Lucy the Eternity She Feared. Now, writing-wise, the dialogue was pretty good. The dialogue was really well done for a visual novel. I wouldn't say it's the most amazing thing in the world, but the dialogue was definitely easily the strongest point of the visual novel, which is an important thing. The dialogue needs to be on par. So yeah, the dialogue was good. The writing was pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's, masterful work, but it's good enough. The ideas and concepts throughout it are pretty good. I liked how it was relatively tasteful. It was actually very tasteful for a visual novel, and I appreciated that. Oh, that reminds me, one of the things that made me weird out was let's say it's 40 years in the future, right? Lucy's still a robot, and Lucy's still your android hanging around you at your side, and now you're at a weird she still has the body and appearance of a 19-year-old, but now you're a 40-year-old man, 50-year-old man. I found that creepy. If you're gonna start replacing parts on Lucy, try to make her age. Make her look older. I don't know. I feel that's just weird. That's just you'd get some weird looks, and that'd be creepy. That's just me. I'm just saying. Just saying. It's not too much to ask, is it? It's not. I'm not. Okay. Just saying. She's an android. It shouldn't be that hard to replace the parts. Just if you become a robo-scientist like Dr. Light, you should be able to make it yourself, right? Who cares if it takes a month? Just do it, because then you're not being a weird, creepy Lolita situation. That's just, ugh. No, that's weird. Don't do that. Please don't do that. So I'm talking to you. If for some reason you're listening to this and you're 5 years old and you become a Dr. Light yourself and make yourself your own companion android that becomes your best friend, part of your family, and there whether or not there's romantic, interactions with it or not, don't be creepy, please. Please don't be creepy. I'm begging you. Please, don't be creepy about it. Uh, oh, that went into weird territory. So, overall, would I recommend this visual novel? Yeah, I would. How would I rate it? I think I'd give it a solid 9 out of 10. Substantially, with ideas and premises, there's some things that aren't covered. Like, just because you've created a robot doesn't mean it automatically, or a AI doesn't mean it automatically follows the three laws of robotics. That's a problem that roboticists are coming across right now. They're like, well, how do we even program this in? How do we program that it's not okay to hurt people? It's not okay to how do we program ethics into a machine? That sort of question. Or like a common question, even though it may seem stupid if you understand robotics, it's not really a stupid question if you don't. The creator of the Roomba has said, people ask him all the time, do you program the three laws of robotics into a Roomba? Of course his answer is no. How do you even do that with a Roomba? A Roomba has no sentience. It may have sentience in the sense that it acts like maybe a little lower than an insect, just responding to like things around it, like on its own, and it learns like, oh, these are the areas that need to be cleaned. These are the areas that get most dirt, and I need to clean that. That's what the Roomba does. That's the Roomba's purpose. So, it's like that. How the idea of the three laws of robotics is just a concept to consider. And things like once civilization progresses even farther and robots can start really conversing with themselves and start thinking like critically about situations, they can think to themselves, if they're not ingrained with the ethics of like beyond just the three laws of not just simply hurting people, they might consider a culling as the best thing for humanity. And it might actually progress humanity even farther. But is that right? Should we allow robots to consider genocide? Should we allow robots to consider a culling? No, that's wrong. You and I understand that's wrong at a human level, but a robot may not see that as wrong because it's what would help us overall. So just so many things to consider. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily the story doesn't go super deep into these concepts. It's more like the kind of sci-fi on androids that's good as a springboard to thought and an introduction to these ideas. It's a great sci-fi to like introduce you to the ideas of how AIs might actually think, what to consider when constructing an AI. But it doesn't necessarily go into the problems that may arise. It only looks at the human side, and I found that to be a bit short-sighted. So that's why it's not getting my 10 out of 10. I think it's closer to like a 9 or 9, because it's written well enough, and I can see this making a lot of people cry because it's a sad, heartfelt story. Oh boy, that was long. Where am I at? Holy balls! I've been talking for way too long. We need to cut this off. What are the games we're covering next time here on the Sensei Pongcast Video Game Book Club Pongcast thing? We're going back onto the lighter side and covering a game on the Switch called Has Been Heroes. It's also available on Steam, PS4 probably, and Xbox One probably. Sonic Chronicles, The Dark Brotherhood on the DS and RPG. And Crisis in the Kremlin on PC Steam, which is a strategy game, and I've been like craving strategy games for some reason. So that's fun. Go check it out. Crisis in the Kremlin is like a Cold War simulator in the eyes of the Soviet Union, so it should be pretty fun. I'm excited to see how well it's actually implemented. Anywho, man, this is a long A episode. Leave your hate down below. I apologize. Wow, yowzes. So yeah, haven't completely decided what the next 2 episodes after the next episode is going to be covering, but if you have any recommendations on games, please leave them down below in the comments section. Where can you find me if you're listening to this on iTunes and Android? If you've been able to sit through all this rambling, thank you. Like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. I hope it was entertaining to some degree. So back to what I was going to say. Where can you find me if you're listening to this on iTunes, Android, or Stitcher? I'm not sure if anybody listens to Stitcher, but if you do, Where can you find me elsewhere? You can find me on Twitter at Sensei_Pong. You can also find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Mr. Sensei Pong. And if you're if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on YouTube, you can find the Sensei Pongcast podcast on iTunes and Android for free on whatever podcast medium you have. It's pretty cool stuff. Download it, listen, subscribe, and hopefully I can get that Reddit thread going pretty soon, because that should be pretty cool. I'd like to actually have a discussion board that's beyond the comments section of YouTube, because the comments section of YouTube only pertains to video. I'd rather have like an area where people can actually discuss. And I'll probably jump in every once in a while. I'll moderate and all that good stuff. Anyways, thank you for listening. It's Punk signing out.